Welcome to another episode of the Para Cave podcast. And now over to your host, Troy Warner, broadcasting live from the world-famous Para Cave.
And yes, welcome back to the Para Cave podcast, and this is the NRL Round review for round number 4, and I've got a very special guest, a previous guest on the podcast, a rugby league lover. He's in and around the game for Triple M on the sidelines and was at a couple of games during the weekend. Welcome to the Para Cave podcast, Mr. Elliott Lovejoy.
Hello, Troy. How are you, mate?
Not too bad, not too bad. A month of football has passed since we last spoke. How have you enjoyed the first month?
Yeah, I think for the most part, the games have been allowed to flow. There was a couple on the weekend where they're a bit stop-starty, but I think the product, like last year, is arguably the best it's been for the fans in a long time. And there's some nice storylines. I think most people would be lying if they said the West Tigers weren't near or thereabouts their second team at the moment. It's been nice seeing them sort of at least in the fight every game they've played, and yeah, a couple of surprises as well, and the doggies flexing their muscles.
Yeah, that's it. They sit on top of the NRL ladder at the moment. Well, let's jump into round number 4 and the review. It started way back on Thursday night. The Rabbitohs got the victory over the Panthers, 28 points to 18 at Accor Stadium. What were your thoughts about that game? The Rabbitohs, they are still without Latrell. He's due back apparently this week and got the win.
Yeah, I think I'm so impressed with the team as a whole, but there's individuals there, and I know it's been said time and time again, but Keaon Koloamatangi is in the shape of his life, and he's been outstanding. I thought Cody Walker had a lot of influence on the game without needing to be an absolute star, and the work rate of Jai Gray, I think, is all but assured that he'll stay in the 17, even with Latrell back. I think the beauty of Jai Gray is that he came through the system as a half. So if he's your 14, for example, and I think you can keep Havili as well on that bench and have two big middles in there with them, then you've got injury cover, right? And you look at the weekend, that would have been a really good example of Alex Johnston goes off at half-time, having someone like Gray there. Maybe they would have shifted him to fullback, Latrell to the centres, and then one of the boys in the centres out to the wing. So I think it's a no-brainer that he'll be in the 17, and you marvel at what Wayne can do, Troy. You feel like he could go to the worst regional footy club ever that hasn't won a game in 6 years. And I'm not saying they'd win the competition, but they'd improve out of sight. His ability, not necessarily to change the way teams play, but to make them believe in themselves, I think is going to be his legacy. Because what he's done at South already, and you see what's happening at the Dolphins, you just marvel at the man, you do.
Yeah, no, for sure. I mean, he definitely is the super coach, that is for sure. With Latrell coming back this week, and as you mentioned, Jai Gray there, is there a potential for Latrell to go into the centres with Campbell Graham out, do you think, or does he just go back to fullback?
I reckon he'll just go straight to fullback. I'd be shocked if they'd put him in the centres for a week just to move him again. I think there's potential, like they have in the past, to move him during games.
Okay.
If the game calls for it, if he's absolutely knackered or if there's injury, that kind of thing. But I think he does, as good as Jai Gray is and his effort areas are outstanding, the touch of Latrell Mitchell, I reckon they've missed out on some points due to the lack of him being at fullback this year, where he would have finished off a sweeping play on the left side of the field. I think he'll help unlock Cody a little bit too. Yeah. So, again, you speak of shape of their life. Latrell, he is you look at photos of him now compared to, say, 12, 18 months ago, he's shed the weight, he's looking trim, he's looking fit. I can't wait to see this version of him this weekend and beyond. Yeah,
and especially in the Booker Feuds game against the Roosters. Where to for the Panthers? What's going on with them, do you think? Are they struggling a little bit, missing a few of their players? Obviously, they left in the off-season, but Nathan Cleary wasn't playing on the weekend due to concussion protocols, so he'll come straight back in.
Yeah, I think Luai's a bigger out than a lot of people will admit. I think in terms of his competitiveness, how he complemented Cleary, but I don't necessarily think it's panic stations to them. They're missing Edwards and Cleary. With Cleary coming back, it's obviously a big in against the Cowboys. I think the thing that is a bit of a worry is their defence, because even without Cleary or without Edwards, there's still no real excuse to be licking as many points as they are. And Ivan Cleary, no doubt, will be frustrated with that and working on that. But this is what happens when you have to blood a lot of kids, which they are at the moment. It's finally caught up to them a little bit. It's the most vulnerable, quite obviously, they've been in about 5 years. Am I willing to write them off this year? Absolutely not. I think Cleary comes back, Edwards comes back. They're a very different side. But, it's the first time, really, they've been challenged in almost half a decade.
Yeah, no, that's for sure. Never write off a champion side. Well, the first game on the Friday night was the Roosters taking on the Gold Coast Titans at Allianz Stadium, and the Gold Coast got the win 30 points to 12 there in a wet game at Allianz. What were your thoughts on that one, the Roosters and the Titans?
Just impressed by the Gold Coast's ability to stay in the battle, which they did the week before against Newcastle, and it's something they haven't been good at for the most part of franchise history, if I can be honest. They sort of will get in an arm wrestle and then fold. The last 2 weeks, they haven't done that. Newcastle dominated the first 15 minutes against them the week before. They were outstanding on their goal line and went on to absolutely wallop the Knights. And then this week, same thing. There's a lot of pressure heaped on throughout the game from the Roosters. They withstood that. And they must be a fit side in 2025 because their second halves at the moment have been very good. Even round 2, their first game, I know they lost, but their second half was really good. I think what impresses me too with Des is that he didn't press panic stations with Keanu Kinney out. He's stuck with Brimson and Campbell in the halves, which I love. I think they're going to be a wonderful combination for a long time. And De Groot did his job. And De Groot doesn't need to be a superstar in that team with your Brimsons, with your Campbells around there. For him to come back at some stage, I hope. Kieran probably doesn't, but I hope they stick with the current 6 and 7, and maybe Kieran plays as a 14 or whatever it might be. I'm really impressed by them. And Tino, mate. Tino's the form forward of the competition outside of Payne Haas.
Yeah, no, he certainly is, and obviously having that year off last year with the knee injury, he's fit and ready to go and firing. Jaden Campbell, a good intercept try to Jaden there, pretty much the length of the field. It was... Now, one of my bugbears in the game at the moment is short dropouts, and 11 minutes to go, it was 12-all, and the Roosters, I think it was, did a short dropout. Was that the right choice at that time, do you think?
I think they've got set plans. For example, the Cowboys game, we were at that on Saturday. Cowboys had a man in the bin, and they were still going short off the dropout, and I'm sitting there thinking, what would you do? Just kick it as long as you can and defend your bums off. However, with, I think, a minute left to Cohen Hess in the bin, they went short and got the ball back. So I think they see the pros outweighing the cons most teams at the moment, which is, I think, probably 16 out of 17 sides are going long all the time. Going short all the time now. So whether we agree or not, it seems to be that the analytics for the teams say it's more positive to go for it than not. But yeah, it would scare me. I'd just be betting as far as I can, to be honest with you.
Yeah, that's exactly what I'd be doing. I know Parramatta aren't the best at short dropouts, so yeah, I'd be kicking it.
Or even getting the dropouts out on time, which are on the weekend. So
yeah, that's true for sure as well. We'll get to that one a little bit later, but that ended up a 11-game losing streak against the Roosters for the Titans. The Roosters, they had that great win against the Panthers a couple of weeks ago. Tough road trip to New Zealand last week. This loss again. Victor Radley looks like he's going to be out for another couple of weeks as well. Is that just sort of the season that they are going to have this year, you think?
Yeah, I mean, they've got enough talent on the field that we saw against the Panthers that they can go out there and beat some of the better teams. And they've got out-and-out superstars in your James Tedesco's, etc. And you're going to have the emergence more and more of Rob Toyer, and some of their young forwards are very good. But Robbo won't say it. It is a rebuild year. They're not winning the competition this year. They've got some steady old heads in that team where they could maybe compete for anywhere between, I think, about 7th to maybe 10th. But I can't see them. They won't be a top 4 side. I'm happy to hang my hat on that. They might scrape into that if they can play their best footy. But, I think for now, they're a weaker side than what we've gotten used to in the past. It'll be interesting to see how long Joey Manu lasts in rugby. All the rumblings over there. He doesn't get enough ball and he's not super happy. And Suali'i, he's killed it when he has been playing in Union. But again, I mean, how long till he gets bored? And how long till he thinks, okay, I've ticked this box, I've done that? Does he want to play in a World Cup in Union? I'm not sure. But I'd imagine they'll get those boys back at some stage.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see what happens there. Now to a game that you were at, the Battle of Brisbane. The Brisbane Broncos taking on they were the away side to the Dolphins at Suncorp Stadium.
Yep.
Cracking game, that one. The Broncos ended up getting the victory. What were your thoughts on that one? They won 20 points to 12. One of the highlights, I guess, throughout the game was the Herbie Farnworth-Katoni Staggs battle.
Yeah, worth the price of admission. I love watching those two players just by themselves, but watching them up against each other, was awesome. I thought Brisbane looked a bit more fluid in attack than they did against the Cowboys, despite scoring less points. It was horrendous. We were on the sideline for that, and it was absolutely bucketing down, particularly that second half. It was horrible. I thought Reece Walsh had probably his best game of the year in that he was safe. He did what he needed to do at the back. I think he set up a try as well. I thought he was pretty good, but I worry about the Dolphins. I worry about their pack, and I can't help but be intrigued, and I hope this is what happens, that if they get the signature of Daly Cherry Evans, how different their attack could look with him at 7, Katoa at 6 in 2026. I'd be really excited to see that, to be honest. So they're not a team that would win the comp, I believe, with Cherry Evans coming, but they're a team that could compete for that top 8. And I marvel at what maybe Katoa could learn under DCE for a year or two as well.
Yeah, for sure. Is it potentially the Wayne Bennett factor leaving that club? And we've seen in the past what he does at clubs
I think so.
When he leaves.
Yep, and I think the players miss him. Individuals miss him, mate. Latrell missed him desperately when he left. Cody Walker missed him desperately. And we're seeing it this year with Jermaine Asako, when he's coached by Wayne Bennett. I think he's a top 3 or 4 winger in the competition. But he's had a really difficult start to the year. The Hammer, I was reminded multiple times his full fitness on Friday night, but geez, it didn't look like it. He really struggled to get into the game, and just he hasn't looked himself to start the year. And the Wayne factor, everyone talks about the way he can coach, but the way he is with individuals, I think, is criminally underrated. The way he owns relationships with players that they're not problem players at all. They're players that maybe need a bit more love or need to be spoken to in a different way. He's the best in rugby league at that, and I think they miss him terribly.
Yeah, that's for sure. Corey Pakes, he scored the second Brisbane try, I think it was. Great little dart from dummy half. Be interesting to see what happens down the track when Ezra Mam is due to come back. Do you think he'll retain his spot?
Yeah, it's an interesting one, isn't it? I mean, there's two trains of thought for mine at the moment, is that they'll bring Ezra back through Q Cup, and he may not play much first grade, if at all, this year, unless there's an injury. Or if Madge is set on him being the number 6 for the Broncos, then, we could see Hunt to 9, and then I think Pakes would probably get the 14, to be honest with you.
That'll be probably the plan that'll go into place, because, I mean, he's playing some good footy.
He is, and you know what? And that's taken nothing away from Billy Walters. I think Billy has found a home at 14 for the Broncos this year as well. I think he's been really strong in every game he's played. So it's a good problem to have, mate. They got Blake Moser coming back, and that kid wouldn't shock me if he gets signed up elsewhere eventually. I think he's going to be a really talented 9. Their hooking stocks went from, who's going to play there, to we've probably got too many. So I think what we'll probably see in 2026 is at least one of them forced out, and whoever picks up a Walters or a Pakes or a Moser is going to be a very lucky club, because I think they can all play.
Yeah, definitely. The wet weather football continued on Saturday. The first game was the Dragons taking on the Melbourne Storm at Jubilee Oval, Cogra, for the purists. The Dragons got their first win of the season, 14 points to 8. And Shane Flanagan, he seems to have the edge over Craig Bellamy when it comes to coaching.
Yeah, isn't it funny? We say, and I agree with you, don't get me wrong, we say, Flanagan's all over Bellamy. He's still got a losing record against him, but it's just so much better than everyone else's record. I think he's 8 and 9 against him all time now, but he, in recent times, certainly has a model that seems to work. He frustrates the Storm out of the game, and I think they worked out, the Dragons, look, our attack maybe isn't as fluent as it should be. One thing that we can do is control our destiny with our defence, and they were marvellous. So look, Clint Gutherson's body language, as it always is tremendous. The players want to play with him and for him. I thought they were really good. I thought their forwards fought hard against a really big, strong, mobile Melbourne pack. and they did enough. They scored enough points when they had to. Val Holmes, I think, has been a really good pickup for them, and it's a tremendous win. It really is.
Oh, to hold the Melbourne Storm to 8 points and 0 in the second half, and to come back in those conditions, it was a great win. And another player as well that stepped up was Jaden Sewer as well. Forced a Melbourne Storm dropout by basically picking up, I think it was it the winger, I think, for Melbourne, and forced him back in goal, just lifting him up. And I think it was Coates, I think.
Yeah, well, and you look at Sewer was arguably up against the form back row in the comp in Ali Katoa and got the points decision. So, I mean, we've seen Sewer's form the last couple of years. It got him back to the State of Origin contention, then into the team. That was a big matchup for him on the weekend, and he probably won that. I know Katoa had the try assist early, but outside of that, he was kept relatively quiet.
Yeah, that's it. I'm just happy as a Parramatta fan that the Dragons got the win last week, and hopefully not this week against Parramatta.
That's it, yeah.
Get that one out of the way. But look, I like the Panthers. I don't think it's panic stations for the Melbourne Storm this early on in the season either. But great to see the Dragons get their first win of the year. Another game that you were at on the weekend, the Cowboys got their first win of the season as well against the Canberra Raiders. This was an interesting old game that happened. It's sort of the Cowboys got off to the good start, and then the Raiders came back a little bit, and then the Cowboys had to go on with it there.
Yeah, there's just no flow to it. I thought that game was, and I don't like commenting on referees if you don't have to, but it was poorly officiated. We had 14 set restarts and 14 penalties, I think was last count. So 28 total, which means a restart or a penalty every less than 3 minutes. Neither team was that bad that it should have been the case. And it affected what was a pretty good game of footy, I thought. It was really humid. Obviously, we had the break at the 20-minute mark of both halves. It was 95% humidity, almost 30 degrees. It was stupidly muggy. And the pickle juice was out for, I reckon, half the Canberra team by the end of it. They were really feeling the pinch. But fun game to watch. It was one of those games where Jake Clifford was on. The thing with him is just trying to find that consistency. They don't need him to score a double each week, but they need him to be a 7 out of 10 each week rather than a 4 one week and then a 9 the next. And I think that's always been what Jake Clifford has been searching for and whatever club has been attached to him. So hopefully that's the beginning of this. I thought some individuals for the Cowboys were really good. I thought Jeremiah Nene had his best game in a long time. And I credit Todd Payton because he's been under the microscope, rightly so, but he was brave enough to bring him on half an hour into the game rather than wait till the dying embers of the second half. He brought him on early, had an impact straight away, was chasing kicks, was a threat. More importantly, he had 3 carries within the first 6 minutes of being out there, which can be unlike him at times. He was busy.
Yeah, that's for sure. Have you ever had the pickle juice before yourself?
Yes, it's terrible. It's terrible. It was meant to be my best friend, but I struggled to keep it down. It's awful stuff. It really is.
Yeah, you do see that sometimes. The players bring it back up. I never want to have it, to be honest.
No, don't do it.
No need. And Tom did, and he scored pretty much the match-winning try there late in the game for the Cowboys. He had a great game as well. It was interesting, though, that the Raiders actually stayed up in Townsville for a week before this game to acclimatise. So it was nearly a masterstroke by them.
Yeah, and look, we went to the presser after the game. Ricky Stewart, I think anyone that watched that presser, people love to bag Ricky for the way he speaks in pressers. I don't think anyone could knock him. The way he spoke in that, he was very respectful. He credited the Cowboys for their performance. He backed his number one in KO Weeks. He said Corey Horsburgh needs him to pull his head in a little bit in terms of pushing passes, that kind of thing. But I think in terms of preparation, they did everything right. And their forwards dominated the first 15 minutes of that game. And as he said in the presser, they just didn't capitalise. They could have been up, I think, 2, 3, 4 tries even in that first 15, 20 minutes, such as the domination. But credit to the Cowboys, they hung in there. Their bench turned the game. I think an underrated player for them is Griffin Neame. I think he's one of the better bench forwards in the competition. He had 7 carries to 74 metres in his first little stint. He was really busy. He's a nice big body coming off the bench. And geez, didn't they need that? The shoulders of Payton and the coaching staff of the Cowboys, they'd be a lot looser now after finally getting on the board. But it doesn't get any easier as they had to Penrith this weekend.
Yeah, that's it. That's for sure. Well, Another cracking game on Saturday was the one after it, and maybe the match of the round. It almost had like a semi-final feel. That was the Bulldogs taking on the Sharks at Shark Park. The Bulldogs got the win, 20 points to 6, and they find themselves on top of the competition ladder at the time. First time since 1993, I think it was, that they've won 4 straight at the start of the season. They're going pretty well.
Well, they're going well, Troy, with troops missing, which is a scary part.
That's it.
Bailey Hayward playing 6, and they've had Kiko out and a couple other players as well. Jacob Carraz is still yet to come back. Bronson Cherry's form is putting him probably in conversation around State of Origin if it continues. But they're just a brave team, and Seraldo has recruited beautifully. Picking up Satili Tupanua. I know he had that horrendous shot, and he's probably going to be wiped out for a game or two, but he adds so much starch to that pack that's already a good pack. Reid Marnie's playing consistent footy again. Connor Tracy's a workhorse at the back. And I think guys like Bailey Hayward and Kurt Mann are really underrated players for him. I think they're role players that doesn't matter if they're playing 9, 6, 13, wherever, they do a job. And they're a fun side to watch. They're tough. They're gritty. I think one of the commentators said on the weekend they've got the best line speed in the comp, and they've got the best kick chase. And if those two things are in your favour, you go a long way to being a top 4 team.
Yeah, no, definitely for sure. As you mentioned there, Bronson Cherry as well. He loved playing at Shark Park, and especially after he scored his second try, he put the finger up to the lip to be quiet to the crowd. But certainly going well. Jacob Preston as well. He may be in the mould for a State of Origin as well.
Some good young back rowers coming through, and Jacob's one of them. He's just works his bum off. He's one I've been watching. The other one is, and unfortunately he's done a hammy now, but I think he would have been there or thereabouts in that squad, is Dylan Lucas at the Knights. I really like what he does. Again, just works hard, makes his tackles, runs a good line, no nonsense. So I know Angus Crichton and Liam Martin are out-and-out guns. They're the starting New South Wales back rowers without question, but some guys like Preston, Lucas and a few others coming through would get you pretty excited for the future as well.
That's it. Where to for the Sharks now? Is this a bit of the Vegas hangover that we saw last year from a couple of the sides, or what do they need to get back into that winning mode?
I thought they just frustrated themselves, to be honest with you, Troy. I think, they frustrated themselves, but the Bulldogs also played a big part in that with their defence, with their line speed. They didn't give any time. Braden Trindle looked flustered, which he hasn't at all this year. I don't think they need to change too much. I just think the Dogs are very good. And Craig Fitzgibbon's very good at that himself. He's not I doubt we'll see any changes to the team sheet other than Kyle Iro is obviously out for a few weeks with that hammy. Other than that, I think they'll stick pretty strong and stick to what they know heading into this weekend. I think you could cross that one off as a bit of a blip against a very good team.
Do you think Reid Marnie was lucky to stay on the field with his little... It was more of a chest to the head, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was. Reid, that's the way he plays. And if you played against him, I reckon you couldn't stand him. He would annoy the you-know-what out. You'd have nightmares about it. You'd go home and be cranky about the way he played. However, flip it, if he's on your team, you would love the bugger and love that he works so hard and love that he's got that dog in him and the fight. So, double-edged sword. Dogs fans love him. I think every other fan in the competition maybe is frustrated by him at times. And I'm sure he loves that. He's playing good footy, though.
Yeah, he is. Now, from a side who's won all 4 games to a team that has lost all 4 games, and that's my team, the Parramatta Eels. They went down to Manly, 26 points to 12 at Brookvale. Very disappointed again, Eels fan here. It was always going to be interesting to see what sort of a reception DCE would get going, running onto the field there. From what I heard, there was no booing of him. He was actually one of Manly's better players.
Yeah, and I'm glad Manly fans treated him that way, because I think he's been classy in the way he's dealt with things. This is just my opinion, by the way. I think the club's absolutely stuffed it up. I think to offer still one of the best halfbacks in the competition, $750 a year, considering the money that others are making, is a joke. And I also look at that, diving deeper into it, I don't understand Manly's plan, because if they weren't going to offer him anything, they must have thought, okay, we've got a great young kid coming through. But they don't. They got rid of Humphreys. Obviously, Fainu went to the Tigers the year before as well. So in terms of their backup plan, there isn't one there. The other side of it, I think, is, okay, they must have someone locked in. And I know they got Fogarty in their sights, but that is far from a done deal. That could be a 50-50 or less chance for them. So if those two things aren't in place, then you would think, okay, we got this guy that's been here, he's won a competition, he's our leader, people love being with him, he's still the Queensland captain, let's pay him $1 million at least over 2 years. And they didn't want to do that. As much as they tried to get on the front foot with the media, Manly, I think they've handled it terribly. And I think they're going to get found out when DCE signs at the Dolphins or the Roosters or wherever he ends up at the end of this, unless he retires, which would surprise me. I think they have, for lack of a better term, and I'd like to say a different word, they've stuffed up royally.
Yeah, for sure, 100%. Another a disappointing thing again for Manly too was the injury to Tom Trbojevic as well.
Yeah.
MCL injury, out for about 6 to 8 weeks with that injury. It's very sad to see, isn't it? He was limping around in the first half. He was basically a passenger, ran straight off at half time. We knew that he wasn't going to come back. But it's pretty depressing to see a player like that injured all the time, isn't it?
And just such a good fella too. It's hard. And apparently he trained the house down all week. Looked like he was lightning like he did in week 1 of the competition. But as soon as that game started, you sat there thinking, how is he playing? Even I don't know when the MCL injury actually happened, but he looked like he was hobbling prior to that. He looked like he was struggling. He looked like he was labouring like he did last year when he played in the competition. And it's a fork in the road moment now for Anthony Seibold and for Manly, in that when he's playing and he's fit, which unfortunately hasn't happened much over the last few years, he's the best fullback in the competition, probably next to Callum Ponga. But they can't keep losing him for weeks and weeks on end. Is it time? Does he move into the centres and have the licence to roam like Joey Manu does? I think they probably should do that now. I think Lehigh Hopewade should get the keys to fullback. He's a very good player. You can move Garrick or Kohler out to a wing or wherever you want to play it, or Talau if he's going to come back in. I don't know what their plan is, and I think Tommy needs to move into the centres. I think now's the time.
Yeah, no, unfortunately, he sort of reminds me of a former Parramatta player, David Woods, who seemed to get cop injuries all the time, and we never really saw his potential. Obviously, we've seen what Tom Trbojevic could do, but let's just hope it doesn't go down that same path. But, you know, Parramatta were in the game. What is the matter with Parramatta at the moment?
Oh, they're lacking a bit of class. I think Mitchell Moses will make that team a lot more competitive when he comes in. I think Dylan Brown's been bashed pillar to post because of the money he signed for at Newcastle. I know the conversation yesterday was he hasn't had a run in the second half. I think they'd had 7 sets of 6 up until the last couple of minutes. They'd hardly had the ball. Could he be more involved? Yes. But he's not necessarily the sole problem there. The problem as a whole is there's not a lot of talent in that team compared to some of the other sides in the competition. I still think Yongi at the back's trying his backside off. I think Sean Lane looks disinterested at times, which is disappointing because there was a couple of years ago where I thought he was one of the most exciting back rowers in the comp. Their forward pack tried. I cannot for the life of me work out why Riley Smith is not starting and not playing most of the game. I think Parramatta are twice the team when he's out there at the moment. He's a workhorse. He's very quickly turned into a leader, and I'm absolutely baffled that they've got Lussick starting over him. I really don't understand it at all.
Yeah, no, look, myself and many Parramatta fans agree with that. We've seen him break all sorts of fitness records, so no doubt he can play 80 minutes.
But even if he can't, Troy, give him 50 straight up or 60 or whatever, but he's got to start the game because he's getting on there when the game's gone.
Yeah, true. And we saw that yesterday. He made a great run from dummy half, straight up the middle, saw that the markers were offside, and
they scored a couple of minutes later. Look, that's not all on him, don't get me wrong, but they're a different team with him at hooker. Yeah,
well, it certainly will be interesting team list Tuesday tomorrow with Dylan Walker set to be named, whether he goes into 6 and move Dylan to halfback, and or if he goes into 14, that means that Riley Smith will probably have to start the game.
Yeah, I think Riley's got to start regardless of what they do with Dylan Walker. By the way, these guys are at NRL level. I never made it past bush footy, but I don't know why Lussick's in that team at the moment. I just wouldn't have him there. I don't see how he makes that team better when he's on the field. So whether Dylan Walker plays as a backup 9 or they bring Brendan Hands back in at some stage, I don't know. But, Riley Smith certainly the 9 moving forward, in my opinion.
That's it. Well, to the last game of the round, 2 competitive sides, and it was a great little game to end the round. The Warriors took on the Tigers out at Campbelltown. The Warriors got the win 26 points to 24. A blown opportunity for the Tigers to get that victory?
Yeah, blown opportunity, but as a neutral fan, what a game to watch.
Yeah.
That was my favourite game of the round by a long way. The crowd were in it, the players were in it, the argy-bargy. Both teams have a lot of raw talent and really fun to watch. There was mistakes made throughout, but both teams had a crack. I think coach of either side, you'd be really happy with your team. Blown opportunity right at the end. I couldn't believe Taruva didn't give that ball after the chip and chase, the perfect chip and chase from Galvin. Inside ball, I think the Tigers probably score. And then from there to compound that, obviously not having a dummy half through fatigue and maybe a bit of miscommunication hurt them. But look, really fun game. I think they're both teams that I don't know if they make the 8. That's just my opinion. I know that the Warriors are 3-1, but they'll be there or thereabouts. But they're going to give it a crack each week. I think you're a fan of either side. You're pretty happy with the performances. And I think I said at the top of this, I'm struggling not to love the West Tigers at the moment. And I admire them being in the game and being in the hunt. And I admire some of the new players that have come along. And even with the reshuffle start of the game, Jack Bird having to come into that side for Dewey and a couple of injuries and HIAs throughout. Really fun game to watch it was.
Yeah, no, definitely, and it's the sort of game that you would think that would be like that, that's for sure, because you never know what you're going to get with both sides, whether they turn it on or not. I think Jerome Luai is potentially facing a suspension, and Alex Seafarth as well for the Tigers, so if they get suspended, that'll be a big blow for them moving forward. Obviously, Jerome's their big off-season purchase. The Warriors, as you said, they're hanging in there. They'll be there or thereabouts. But yeah, they still haven't got that, I guess, killer punch, do they?
No, but I mean, they fought back when it was 24-18, and the crowd obviously had helped turn the game for the Tigers. To be able to turn it around and then find a way to win with young, relatively inexperienced halves is pretty impressive. Wade Egan is such an important part of that side. It's great to see him staying fit. And I thought their forward pack bashed up the Tigers early too. Fisher Harris, Barnett, and the rest of them. Some of the boys on the bench too, just out and out superstar talent. Raw, like we said, but really exciting, mate. And they got quite a few injuries in the outside backs. And I thought a couple of boys that came into the side stepped up from yesterday. So that's a really big away win for them.
Yeah, no, definitely, for sure. And your side, the Newcastle Knights, they had the bye, so no stress for you this week watching your football team play.
Well, I saw that they've let Will Price head back to the UK, so it'll be interesting to see if a certain other number 6 at another club might get an early trip up the highway. We'll see.
Okay, do you think that might happen then, or not this year?
Jason Riles has come out straight away saying it's not something we're looking at all, but if it's not working, I mean, I can't really understand why you wouldn't.
Okay.
But maybe they're set on, hey, as soon as Moses comes back and Brown's at 6, we're a very different team. I could understand that way of thinking. Maybe Dylan doesn't want to leave early. That's the thing. When people are saying, true. He's thrown his toys out of the cot. I don't think that's the case at all. I think he's trying. I just think he's struggling to get into the game because there's not a lot of go forward. But yeah, it'd be interesting. The Knights have obviously freed up a roster spot. So, watch this space.
That's it. Well, after 4 rounds of the competition, the top 8 looks this way. The Bulldogs are on top, followed by the Sea Eagles, Broncos, the Melbourne Storm round out the top 4. The Gold Coast Titans, 5, Warriors 6, Rabbitohs 7, and your Knights in 8th position. A very different looking top 8 to what most people will think it'll finish, but it's good to see different teams in the top 8 this early on.
Yeah, it is, and it's nice to see teams that maybe we saw round 1 or round 2 struggling be able to turn around a bit. The Titans are a good example of that. I have the Titans just in my top 8 to start the year, and I'm hoping they prove me right. I think if they can get it correct, I think they've arguably got if not the best forward pack in the competition, it's on the podium. So they've been exciting. And, yeah, the Warriors, after week 1 in Vegas, looked like the worst team in rugby league history, have turned it around. So, yeah, it's been a fun couple of weeks of footy.
That's it. Well, Elliot, where will we find you on the airways this weekend?
What are we doing? So I'll be on the sideline for the Cowboys Panthers Friday night through Triple M, and then I'll be calling the Titans Dolphins Saturday night, I think with Benny Hannon alongside me, which would be good.
Nice. Well, listeners, you can catch that one on Triple M, Queensland Triple M, that's for sure, or through the app as well. You can catch that action. Elliot, thank you very much for joining me once again for this NRL round review. I really appreciate it, and we'll catch up again maybe in a couple of weeks' time.
Yeah, easy, Troy, no dramas.
Thank you for listening to another episode of the Paracave Podcast. See you next time.